And so this morning, what I want to do is I want to talk about a young girl and her cousin. Her name is Esther, and her cousin is Mordecai. In about 486, something like that, BC, there was a very famous, well-known king called King Xerxes. You've seen the movies. He was like a Biltok, you know? And he decided he would throw a massive party. Listen to this. 180 days. Flat out. Gold everywhere on the floor. Just a proper party. The type of party every one of us hope we're on the list. At least for one of those days. And what he wanted to do, he wanted to show off. He wanted to show off his glorious riches and the magnificent splendor of his greatness. He was a very powerful leader. And he conquered the world around him and more. And he wanted his wife, her name was Queen Vashti, he wanted his wife to celebrate with him. But she refused to do it. She refused to celebrate his splendor with him. And you know, like any king, I don't know, I've never been one of those guys, but you want to show off your best. And so he wanted to show off his queen to everybody. And she just said, no ways, dude, I'm not doing that. So he got properly angry. And so she was disposed. And then something else started. An all-out search started for his new queen. He wanted a new queen. She wasn't going to do it, get rid of her. And an all-out search started for a new queen. Listen, these guys in the old were weird people. And this is not like, oh, I don't like my queen, I'm going to get rid of her. I'm going to start looking for my new king or queen. Anyway, that does happen today. Whether you're a king or queen. But at this time, in the city, the capital city, Susa, there was a guy called Mordecai. He was a Jew. He was a refugee. And he was a quiet guy. He wasn't like a famous, well-known dude. And his first cousin was Esther. She was an orphan. She was a refugee. She was very beautifully. And he single-handedly raised her up. He took responsibility for her life. Long story short, after lots of preparation, remember there's an all-out search for a new queen. And after lots of preparation and beautification and nails and pedicures and manicures and face creams and cucumber and neck massages and all that stuff, all the smellies, she was shortlisted because the king liked her a lot. She was proper beautiful, apparently. And she got the job. How's that? She got the job. She became Queen Esther. Just like that. After lots of interviews of lots of beautiful people, she got the job. How's that for destiny? Imagine that. Who would have thought her life would turn out like that? No idea. This young, beautiful teenage orphan, a Jew, in a world that was non-Jewish, gets the job, queenie. Imagine that. You know, there's a saying, you got to be in the right place at the right time. You've heard of that, eh? It's not so much being in the right place at the right time as it is what you do when you're in the right place at the right time. What you do with that space in your life. Just think about you right now. Think about your life. So I'll go on with the story. So Xerxes, in this whole drama that unfolds, Xerxes gives control of his kingdom to a guy called Haman. And Haman, unfortunately, like so many of us and so many people out there, couldn't handle the authority that he was given, because he was given free reign over King Xerxes' territories, 128 territories, quite a lot of work. And he was given full reign to look after this whole property profile. But the problem was that this authority that he couldn't handle became egotistical power. And it changed the way he would live out his life. And it changed the way he saw people around him. So one of the things he decreed, Haman, without the king even knowing, by the way. So now here's the deal. The king gives Haman full authority to do anything he wants, but to take care of his property profile. And here, Haman does all these things the king is unaware of. The king trusts Haman. You see, when you're leading in life, you learn to push trust down. And when you push trust down, you leave it with those people. Every now and then you see something squiff, you pull it back, you say, what's going on? Okay, that's cool. I understand why it's squiff. Carry on. It's the way it works. I think that's the way things work. But King Xerxes was quite an unusual guy. In fact, let me just give you a bit, right in the beginning of the story, there was this wild 180-day party, and drink was flowing, and anyone could have anything at any time. And King Xerxes knew the complexity of the communities that he was ruling over, and he didn't make a rule, everyone has to drink. He made this rule: everyone can drink if they want to. Anyone can. If you don't want to, that's fine. He had this like tenderness in his heart. He was this like ruling king, and yet there were things about him that were like weird to what he would do. You couldn't walk in his presence unless he held up his golden scepter. If you walked in, he would just have you killed right there and then. And yet, at this party, he allowed people do what your convictions allow you to do. In other words, let me push this back. Many of us go into situations in life and we follow the flow. Everyone at the party is drinking, therefore, I must drink. But what about the convictions of our hearts? What if you don't want to drink? I'm just using drinking as an example. Not that I don't have a problem with that, but a lot of people do. Everyone's snorting cocaine. I do have a problem with that. So I must drink. Everyone cheats, therefore I must cheat. So that's how that sort of thing rolls out. So here's King Xerxes. He's got this ruler ruling for him. His name's Haman. And one of the things that he decrees is wherever he walks, everyone must bow down to him. That's weird, man. So where you walk, there's just like people falling. But this is where things get tricky. Mordecai was a Jew. And he only bowed down to his God, the living God, to worship him. And his worship of God built within him deep conviction as to how he should live out his life. So when Haman passed by, everyone was falling. Mordecai was the last man standing. And Haman's ego got seriously hurt. And he became furious. And he went on a rampage to destroy Mordecai and everything he stood for and every Jew under the rule of King Xerxes. And he made a decree to do that on a certain day. Basically, what Haman was doing is what Hitler did. He was going to annihilate every Jew in the kingdom of Xerxes. An all-out genocide of the Jews was planned. And the king never knew about it. So you see all these characters in the story. You know, destiny or I'm going to mix them together. Our God-given purpose in life. Destiny and our God-given purpose in life. It's a strange thing. It's a strange thing. You see, destiny, it seems like you only know when you go. Destiny doesn't have any preferred people. Destiny unravels in ordinary people's lives, like Mordecai, like Haman, like Esther, like our lives. It seems like destiny is revealed in time. You don't like wake up in the morning and you stamped, this is your destiny. Unless you're Dalai Lama. At the age of 2 was whipped away and he became the Dalai Lama of the Dalai Lama people. It seems like for most of the time we bump into destiny or destiny bumps into us. It's like a strange thing. It's like not clear. We wish it was clear. Like I could imagine many of you sitting here. I wonder what my God-given purpose in life is. I wonder what my destiny in life is. I wish someone would just tell me. Especially young people. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if someone just wrote out the blueprint of your life? This is how your life is going to work out. Hey, Matt, you never saw your life working out like this, right? It just happens. We bump into it. We bump into it. It bumps into us. And often, other people see it in us before we do. That's the weird thing. You know, destiny is like a thread. If it gets pulled, it frees us or it unravels us. Go back to the story. Think of Esther and Mordecai and Haman. The string has been pulled. What's going to happen? What's going to happen in the story of their lives? Let me just say this about destiny. We must always remember this thing. Our destiny, our God-given purpose, is all wrapped up in the promises of God. That's how it works. But let me remind you, God keeps His promises to 1,000 generations. Keep that in mind when you're thinking about destiny. See, destiny flows out. It's beyond us. It's bigger than our lives. It doesn't really fit in our shoes. It goes beyond. It's bigger than our space. That's destiny. That's our God-given purpose. On with the story. Only one person in all of time could have helped Mordecai not die and stop the genocide of the Jews. Only one person. A young, orphaned Jewish girl who is now called Queen Esther. Only she. Think about it, in all of time could have stopped this diabolical thing happening. She had the heart and the ear of the king. And so, like anyone on death row, Mordecai had to make a call. He knew he was going to die. And I need to make a call. Who do you think Mordecai called? Esther. If you could choose anyone at that time to help you and you knew that person and you were going to die and all your friends were going to die and you could phone someone who you think could help, who would you call? I would phone Esther. She had a direct line to someone who could stop the chaos. But he didn't want to abuse his relationship with her in calling her. I think Mordecai calling Esther, asking for help, was actually calling out her destiny. That's what happened in this. I don't think Mordecai, and you read the story in the book of Esther, Mordecai was happy to die. But he wasn't happy for everyone else to die. He was a Jew. But he knew that on his little cousin, there was destiny. So he knew, let me call destiny out of her. And that's what he did. He called it out so that Esther would be reminded that she had a unique God-given purpose for her life, woven into the fabric of her being. You see, it doesn't matter where you've come from. It doesn't matter if you've got a hard luck story. It doesn't matter if you're orphaned. That's not the issue. What matters is that God has destiny over us. God has a a purpose over your and my life. That's what matters. And are we going to be brave enough to walk into that destiny? Or are we just going to sit on the sidelines and watch the chaos of life unravel before us? The thread has been pulled. It'll free us and free others, or it'll unravel us. And so, this is Esther's response to the call. She says this. Remember I said earlier, no one could come into the presence of the king unless he raised his golden scepter. No one, not even Esther. She says this, but Mordecai, I have not been summoned to appear before the king for the past 30 days. You don't understand, Mordi. He's a busy guy. You can't just walk into his office. He's busy. And if I did, I most probably won't walk out. Because of all the protocols surrounding the king and appearing before him, Esther was afraid to approach the king. All the queenie stuff that she was involved in is all new. She didn't know what she could do, etc., etc. But she also knew this. She belonged. She belonged to a tribe that were at great risk of being wiped out. She knew she belonged. She was afraid. But she knew, even in her fear, that God was greater. You see, she was a child of God. She knew the king of the Jews. And he was a God of promise. She knew that in the deepest part of her being, because Mordi had raised her up in a God-fearing way. And now she was in the house of the king, who never knew she was a Jew, by the way. When Esther's words were relayed back to Mordecai, he sent back to her this reply: do not imagine that because you are in the king's palace, you alone will escape the fate of the Jews. Remember, Haman said, annihilate all the Jews. Mordecai, Cousin Mordi, is going, Esther, you're not going to escape this. You're Jewish. Yes, you're a queen. Yes, you're Xerxes' queen. But you're a Jew. First and foremost, you're a Jew. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. If you're not going to do this, if you do not step into your destiny at this time, you must understand our God, who is a God of promise and has promised that He will always take care of us, He will push someone else and they will step in and they will rescue us. There is always someone ready to fulfill their God-given destiny. So she bumps us like a bit hard, I thought, when I read this. But you and your father's house will perish. Now, this is where I want you to listen and remember this part of the verse. It says this: and who knows if perhaps you have come to the kingdom, Xerxes' kingdom, for such a time as this. Destiny. Who knows? This could be your moment. The thread has been pulled. It's going to free you or unravel you. True story for all of us. And who knows if perhaps you have come into this city at this time for such a time as this. Who knows? For all of us. You know that each one of us are just one decision away from a bad choice. Every one of us, right here. We're just one decision away from a bad choice. And equally so, we are one decision away from a great, grand decision. If what we do robs us from fulfilling our destiny, we'll also be robbed of experiencing the promises of God playing out in our everyday lives. That's how serious God is with destiny. If we would just be the people God has destined us to be, we will live in His promises. But there's so much that God has for every one of us. And we seem to short circuit so much because of our fears, or we're not good for this, or we can't do this, or whatever our excuses are. And it's at that point that we never experience all the promises that God has for us. We live like 50% in what God has for us. But what if we're never meant to be 50%ers or 70%ers? What if we meant to live in all that God has for us? For God has promised us. He has promised to fulfill all His promises, and He sent His Son, and He gave His Spirit. He has fulfilled all His promises. Would we dare walk in all that He has put out for us? You know, I do believe conviction plays a large role in our God-given purpose, because conviction will determine whether we'll compromise or not. That's what conviction does. Like Mordecai, he never bowed down. That's conviction. Conviction is a journey that we're on in life, that we sort out because of our values and priorities and the important things in our lives, the things that are woven into us. I believe God-given destiny has conviction deeply woven into it. And God-given destiny, God-given purpose refuses to compromise truth and devotion as a Jesus follower. Refuses. Mordecai would rather die than bow. Do you remember Meshach, and Abednego? Do you remember those guys? They were about to be burnt. And Nebuchadnezzar said, if you guys don't bow to me and my graven image, you will be consumed by fire. You know what they said? We owe Nebuchadnezzar. You must understand, we're not afraid of you. We will not bow. And even if we are burned up, it makes no difference, because greater is He that is in me than he that is in the world. Mordecai was a man of conviction, a man of deep conviction. I will not bow to anyone or anything except my God, my Lord. You know why? He obeyed the command of God. Have no graven images before you. Let me say this to our young audience, to all of us. Age doesn't grow conviction. Age does not grow conviction. Courage does. Courage grows conviction. And if you're going to be a Jesus follower, be a courageous Jesus follower. 1976, I got saved. I was 14. I was 14. 1976. I was 15. You're trying to work out my age, eh? I'm 45. So easy, guys. I got saved and I fought God for 3 months. I can remember it. September the 19th. That was a war of the soul for me. Every day I cried and I did not know God, but I was getting to know Him. Here God had put Himself in front of me, and I was a normal good guy going to hell. And Jesus found me, and I realized I was a sinner now going to heaven. And He radically changed the way I thought and the way He was radically changing. I was becoming a new person. I didn't understand it. There were things I didn't want to do. I did do, you know, that whole thing. But I fought. I didn't want to let go. I didn't want to let go, and I hold on to the old life. I was 15, for goodness sake. What old life? The sinful man. It doesn't matter how old you are. Sin is sin. It wants to master us. And it had mastered me for 15 years, and I knew it the moment I met Jesus. And I was shaking this thing off, trying to free myself. Jesus was trying to free me. January came. I moved into matric. I was 16. I was one of the smallest guys in matric. And I remember in the middle of January, the pastor of the church called people to give your life, not to give your life to Jesus again, but why don't you just go all in for Jesus? Be filled with the Spirit. Let the Spirit completely rule your life. And let go and trust Him. I thought, I'm in because I can't handle this in between, man. And I remember going to the front of the church and kneeling down at this like wooden altar. And I prayed and I cried and I was there for hours. I got up. And I thought, now what's different? I just had like stains and snot all over me. And what's different? I said, but something in my head said, you only know when you go. So I thought, okay, no one knows I'm a Christian. 4 months, no one knew I was a Christian. I thought, okay, well, I'm going public. My dad was a sign writer, so I asked him to paint a sign for me. And he painted a sign about as big as a table. Dayglow green. With black writing. Jesus loves you. In polystyrene. I had to fit that on the bus. The whole bus went bright green. I went to the headmaster the day before. I said, I need to put up a sign in the notice area. Do you mind? He said, fine. He didn't know what size it was. He didn't know what was going on. The quad was like cream until that day. The whole quad went green. And Jesus loves you glared out at the whole school. That sign lasted 10 minutes. It was torn down and shredded. Polystyrene balls everywhere. From that day on, I realized, I'm going to stand. If everyone falls down, I'm going to stand for Jesus. Conviction started growing in me because one day I decided I'll be courageous. Look at me, I'm a little oak man. But I've got a big God. He is able. Some of you feel like, I'm a misfit, I don't fit in, I'm not able. If you follow God, you are more than able. Just strap on your brave. What happens? Doesn't matter if you get chopped up, you go to heaven in pieces. Who cares? We're all one decision away from a right or a wrong choice. Age doesn't grow conviction. Courage does. Knowing we have destiny over us doesn't mean it eliminates fear from within us. Some of you know you have destiny over you. Many, I hope today you all know you have destiny written over you, woven into the fabric of your being. But here's some bad and sad news. Fear still stays in us. And it's okay. I think we'll always have fear. But the more we wear our brave, the less we let fear have power over our lives. Wear your brave. Stand firm in the strength of His might. Having done everything, stand firm. And the more you stand in Christ, the less fear has a grip on your life. We put on our brave even when we're afraid. And Esther did that. She just walked into the presence of the king. His golden scepter lying on the floor. And he looked up and he saw her. Sometimes we're so afraid we think something's going to happen. You know what? A lot of the stuff never happens. Oh, this is going to happen to you. How do you know? How do you know it's going to happen? Who told you? You only know when you go. She walked in and she told the king. See, Mordecai heard Haman whisper some stuff at the gates of Susa. While Haman was plotting to destroy, he had heard other people plotting to kill the king. And so Esther, I think I got my story a little bit mixed up. No, I'm right, I'm on right. The king, before Haman was given authority, the king was about to be assassinated. And Mordecai heard this and he told on. No one knew who it was, and the king was saved. Enter Haman, got the job of the two guys trying to plot, etc., etc. Now we're up to date with the story. If you want the real version, read the Bible. Let me say this. Our circumstances do not define us. Destiny defines us. God defines us. His promises define us. What we do or don't have doesn't define what we can and can't do. And let me just say, comfort can never guarantee you a thing. Our position in life or leadership can guarantee you absolutely nothing. Money will guarantee you nothing as well. Destiny is destiny. It doesn't matter what we do or don't have, where we come from or where we wish we came from. Destiny is destiny. Everyone wants to be King Xerxes. No one wants to be Mordecai. Everyone wants to be a Haman. No one wants to be an Esther. But look at the story where destiny is properly on a person. Let me just add this about destiny. Silence is not golden. Mordecai said, do not be silent. If you silence, something terrible is going to happen. Silence can be a dangerous decision to make. We were too silent in this country for too long. The church was too silent for too long. And I'm going to say it now. We cannot be silent about anything. There is a time for you to speak and there's a time for you to be silent. Be silent with Jesus in your quiet time. Speak out for righteousness and justice. Do not be silent. Speak to your children about what is right and wrong. Let's not reinvent a bad world again. We must speak up and we must speak out for truth. Let me tell you something. There are people standing up and speaking out for a truth that is not a truth. And many people are following those half-truths. We have a truth. His name is Jesus Christ. And He stands for the defenseless and the broken and the hurting and the disenfranchised and the poor and the impoverished. And He stands for those. And if we are silent at a time like this, many Hamans have raised up in this nation. And they should never be in that position. We need Esthers and we need Mordecais to stand up. We need men and women, young and old, to step into their destiny because it'll save a nation. It'll save a people, not just here, everywhere. We need to learn to discern when to speak for truth and speak out truth. We need to do that. Let me add one more thought. This has been helpful. One more thought. Or a few more thoughts. Can I do that? God can use anyone. He has, He does, and He will. But can He use you? It all stops with me. It all stops with each of us. Can God use you? Oh, but I don't want to be used by God. Oh, yes, you do. Oh, yes, you do. He's full of grace. He's always good. He is kind. He is love. You definitely want God to use you in your destiny. All we need to do is avail ourselves to the destiny that He has in our lives. What if I said this? Closing question. What if I said this or asked this? I want to say this statement to you. You could be exactly where God has placed you. Esther, you could be in the right place at the right time. For such a time as this. What if you are right now in your life in the right place at the right time? Like Mordecai and Esther, Right time, right place. Exactly where their feet were. 486 BC. Exactly the right time. You see, remember, God sees. He sees everything, beginning to end, and everything in between. And yet He still puts destiny in us and over us. There is nothing random about God. Nothing. Therefore, there is nothing random about our lives. Nothing. In the eyes of God, it is planned. So right now, right here today, Jesus calls us to Himself. For Himself, to follow Him. All in. Repent and follow me. This is His call. And He promises those who follow Him, He'll never let you go. He'll always hold you. He's always with you. He makes us His people, His family, sons and daughters. And He puts within us new hearts, a new way of living. And He puts within us a God-given destiny. And He says what He says to Esther. And who knows if perhaps you have come to this kingdom where your feet are right now for such a time as this. And who knows if some of you have come into this space today. You never thought you'd come to church today, but you just thought, this is a building. You just thought, I'd come into this church building today. You never thought you'd come in, but what if this is where you really need to be now, because God is saying this to you. Start your journey of destiny with Jesus now. And if you've derailed and gone somewhere, stop. Put on your courage. Let the convictions of truth deeply root themselves in you, and stand up and be what God wants you to be. Who knows what's going to be freed through your lives? Who knows?